Team news, how's Sam Johnston, and do you have any other injury concerns over the weekend?
No, everybody's fine. Sam's trained quite a bit this week, so we'll see how he is. But he's come through training, so we'll make a call tomorrow on the goalkeeper situation.
Just on the goalkeeper situation, I know you mentioned after the game that it hasn't been a headache for you after Jose Sol's performance, but is it firm in your mind as to who will start against Brighton?
Yeah. No, I'm really clear on who's the best goalkeeper to start for us tomorrow, yeah.
No worries. Just off the back of the City result, came out this week, the FA asked for your observations around your post-match comments. Have you spoke to them, and have you spoke to Howard Webb as well?
I spoke to them, gave them they asked my observations on what's said. And I think, I'm really open in my interviews with you guys, but I think you guys have a responsibility to reflect what I say accurately as well, because at that point in the press conference we were talking about VAR in general rather than, it wasn't linked to the John Stones goal. So I think that's important to state, that when we were discussing VAR at that moment, it was a general VAR chat. It wasn't, like I said very clearly at the start of my press conference, that I could understand the John Stones goal being given, no problem. There is an argument to say that Bernardo Silva isn't interfering, which I understand. But no, my comments, I've given the FA my observations on them, and we wait to hear back.
Have you spoke to Howard Webb at all in terms of the VAR incident and the goal being given? As you mentioned, you don't have an issue with...
I have spoken to Howard. I think it's important that those conversations stay as private as possible, and we agreed on certain things and disagreed on other things. But, it was a decent chat. I just think you can feel around Wolves the fans' frustration towards VAR at this moment, which I understand. I was sent a league table in the week around, we're -20 for VAR interventions, which doesn't mean they're wrong or right. It just means every time VAR gets involved in the last 5 years, if you get a point for it going for you and you get minus a point for it going against you, we're -20. The nearest team to us are West Ham on -6. So it's like, you have an understanding as to why Wolverhampton and the fan base isn't a big fan of VAR at this moment, because every time it gets involved, it does feel like there's a lot of them that go against us, either rightly or whatever we say. But no, I think, there's a few things that feel like they go against you when you're down the bottom of the league. I think it's statistically the toughest start a team has had since 2014, Aston Villa, fixture-wise. The little VAR calls that we argue could have gone our way. But regardless of all that, the team, myself, the club, the fan base just stand up and fight every game. As you saw against Manchester City, we've had some tough bumps and some tough situations, but we're all stood here ready to fight again. And we're ready to go to Brighton and give everything to improve our position in the league.
So yesterday, Matt Hobbs got charged by the FA for an incident or incidents that happened after the match. But my kind of wider question is, Pablo got booked as well after on pitch side, and you mentioned that as well last weekend. Just wonder, after a match ends like that, is maybe more common sense required a little bit, just from officials, referees, to understand kind of the circumstances of how people are acting, especially when something last minute happens like that?
No, it's not for me to tell them how to sort of police behaviours around football matches. It's up to the FA for what they choose is proper. I think I tried my best, because I felt quite calm at that moment. Had a fair idea of what was coming from the VAR check, and managed to remain calm and tried to keep the players on the bench calm, tried to keep the staff calm. I didn't see the Matt Hobbs situation at all, so I'm not sure exactly what happened. But I think we need to behave properly. Of course we do. But I think most people around Wolverhampton, as I said, with the fans and the people, sort of, they understand why there is a growing frustration and a worry. Every time there's a VAR intervention, there's a huge worry that it will continue to not go in our favour.
Going forward, looking at Brighton, you mentioned Strand Larsen having to bring him off after 60, 70 minutes in terms of his fitness. Could you just expand on that in the sense of how can he improve his fitness kind of at this point in the season? What can he do to improve that?
Yeah, no, he's working very hard. He had a small quad issue in pre-season that sort of limited the work he could do. He works really hard every day. I just think you see it all the time, it's just an adjustment to the league and the intensity of the league. He had no problem getting through 90 minutes every week in Spain. His numbers are required to go up in the Premier League. He is required to do more than he did. And he's just adapting to that. He'll adapt fine, no problem. Of course, in the Premier League, and especially at the bottom of the league, there's always an urgency for him to adjust. But, it's part of the process. You see players arrive from other leagues and take time to adapt. I think the positive is the amount of goals he's scored, the threat he is, how well he helps us if we decide to play a little bit more direct. So really pleased with where he's at, just really keen for him to understand the urgency and how keen I am to be able to leave him on and not... Because even when he doesn't come off with cramp, there's some certain parts in games where you can see he starts to fade a bit. And I don't want to feel that. I want to feel like if I choose to take him off, it's purely from a tactical perspective.
And just finally, I wanted to ask you about Rodrigo Gomes, because we saw him in pre-season quite a bit. How's his adaptation to England and the club been so far? What do you need to see from him to bring him off the bench in one sense, but also to really push for it?
Yeah, no, he's been close to coming off the bench. Rodrigo knows, I think, obviously I get to see training every day. And the players in training show me how ready they are or are not to perform at the weekend. And for whatever reason, at this moment, Rodrigo hasn't done enough to nudge me into that. Isn't saying that he does anything wrong, but just means that if a couple of times he needed some pace or an attacking change, it's ended up being Carlos. If we'd needed to maybe shore things up a little bit, sometimes it's been JJ or but he's knocking. His performances especially in training, have started to come closer to the level that we hoped he would get to. He's a great kid, so he's just done extras again out there with Tim Jenkins and Deza for half an hour because he's so keen to improve. And I think probably that he was signed to help the squad, and obviously then because the window went the way it did, there's been more of a focus and a spotlight on why he's not in now. The plan was never for him to come in and start every Premier League game for us. Of course, he'll have wanted to play more than he has, and I'm sure he will do. But yeah, just one of those things where we haven't seen it quite right to get him on at this moment.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Hi, Gary.
Hi.
How do you sort of use this sense of grievance that you've got how do you sort of channel it into the next game, or is it a case of just not doing that? It's more about keeping cool head.
Yeah, no, there's no grievance. I think it's just trying to explain to everyone why Molineux feels how it does with VAR at this moment. Like the fans' frustrations, people outside of here probably just think, it's Wolves moaning about VAR again. But when I saw those numbers, I found it quite interesting. It's a big difference to all the other teams in the league. Funnily enough, the team we play next are top of that with +9. But yeah, so it's a 29 difference between VAR interventions for them and us. But there is nothing in there so they might all be correct, by the way. I haven't been through and checked all of them, so all of them that have gone against us could all be correct. But that's why there is such a feeling. And I think that's why you see the reaction from some of the players when there are these checks that go against us. But we are working really hard. And as I say, the post-match after Manchester City was much better than previous games where late checks have gone against us. Normally when I walk in the changing room after a check like that, there's a real 99% of the noise is around that. Whereas when I walked into the changing room after the Manchester City game, there was much more around us and what we'd done, which is how it needs to be. So of course, like I said to you, we're ready to fight no matter what. And as you can see with the supporters against Manchester City, when we had to dig in and fight and scrap for the game, they're right there with us. So that will continue to be the case. The club, the team, myself, staff above me, staff below me, we will all just continue to fight and push. And this weekend is a great opportunity for us to go and show that again.
How much encouragement do you take from the performance? Because defensively particularly, you created chances as well.
Yeah, we created a couple of chances. It was obviously an extreme version of a defensive display, but planned that way. It wasn't like we were we were sat deep in the pitch and we didn't want to be. That was where we wanted the game to be in that game, because we felt it gave us the best chance. And the detail and the work and the understanding of all the situations really came through and helped us really give ourselves a chance to beat the best team around. So disappointed that obviously the lads had to suffer another defeat, because it's not all. But there were a lot of positives in it. There were a lot of positives around focus and effort and application to game plan and the results that it, or the results, I guess, in performance that it can bring if you really do commit to it.
And in terms of Brighton, they've claimed some major scalps this season, as we all know. Very well-run club by all accounts. What sort of a challenge there?
Yeah, no, big challenge, of course, going really well. Part of that sort of toughest set of fixtures since 2014 that I spoke about earlier. Fantastic side. Were already a fantastic side with Roberto there last year. Still a lot of stuff still there from Roberto, and I think it looks like the new manager is trying to shift it, but there are some bits there that are very similar. Obviously, on top of how well they did last year, they had a fantastic transfer window, incredible transfer window with funds and excellent players. So will be a great test for us, but as I say, one that I'm looking forward to taking the lads into battle there again and going there against people may think our chances are, and just putting on a real rugged display and trying to show real grit and fight and quality that we know we possess to try and cause them some problems.
Thanks a lot.
Okay.
Hello, Gary. As I remember the fixture there last season, there wasn't that much goal-mouth incident, but it was a technical spectacle, if you know what I mean. It felt like a real match of, coaching styles and the different formations of the team. So, could we expect something similar to that?
I think last year, we counter-attacked really well there. I think it was Pedro and maybe Chani as nines, or Pedro and Cunha. I can't remember exactly who it was up front, but we used Pedro as a 9 that day, obviously, because Roberto's teams do leave themselves sort of man for man at the back a lot. So tried to exploit it. This will be slightly different. They're not quite so aggressive without the ball. Don't go man for man very often. So we'll be slightly. They do still have a lot of possession. They do still play in that sort of way where they try and dominate the ball. Lots of rotations. Slightly more difficult to prep for this probably than last week, because obviously Pep has been around the Premier League for a long time, and there's a lot of evidence around what his teams do in certain situations. Obviously this week slightly different to that, with a much newer, younger manager who's obviously settling in really well into the Premier League, doing a great job. So it'll be a good game, I'm sure it will. But another big test, as I say. They've got lots of attacking talent in the 11 on the bench, so we're going to need to be right at our best again to give ourselves a chance of taking 3 points.
Does formation matter or system matter as much as people think it does? Because you're aware of a lot of the discussion about the way you set up, and I hear you say regularly, well, it's not as simple as that. Yeah,
no, it isn't as simple as that, and being a back five every week in the Premier League is really difficult. That's why Crystal Palace, I think, maybe Southampton, there's no back fives left really in the Premier League, because it is difficult against certain systems to be a back five. You can be a back five, but you'll just end up with one back out of it for ages, which basically means you're a 4 with a centre back higher up the pitch. But there are opportunities to be a 5 in the league still. We will use both because of obviously, 1, the situation we're in, 2, because of what we have in the building. Santi did really well last weekend, I thought, in a tough test. So there are opportunities for us to be a 5. Last year we were a 4 quite a lot, with Totti at left back and Rayan in front, which people would have definitely taken as a 5. But it does matter. But certain games it is really difficult to be an actual 5 in. Very difficult. But let's see. We'll see what fits best tomorrow.
So one game doesn't necessarily tell us much about the next one.
No, because Manchester City, a back 5, I think is really good against them. Every time we've played them, I think it fits really well against what Manchester City do. There will be certain teams that I don't think it fits very well against. That doesn't mean that we can't do it. It just means that it will cause its own problems as well as solve some. So Just decisions really around what we think is best each week. Really clear around what I think is best this weekend. Tough away game. Good thing is a lot of players available, not too many missing. Of course, Yerson and Buba still. But apart from that, we're in a